Hey there, my name is Cole Adams, and you are watching the best college basketball podcast out there that covers the entire sport of college basketball, brackets, bubbles, and bid stealers. Now, here are your hosts, Sam Fetterman and Jonathan Lidskin.
Season 6, episode 35 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bid Stealers. I am Sam Fetterman. Jonathan Lidskin is not here with us today, but that will not stop us from another tip-off talk. We've done a couple this week already. Let's do another. Time to preview the two-time reigning WCC champion St. Mary's Gale. Zach Farmer is here with me. Zach, how are you doing?
Great. Great to be here on a Friday afternoon to get the weekend kicked off and talk some Gales basketball.
Nothing better than an August Friday where you can watch baseball, you can watch soccer, and you can talk basketball. We got a lot of stuff going on.
Absolutely. I wish my Giants were playing a little bit better, considering they have hit the hard skids this season. But
yeah,
luckily, basketball is coming.
Yes, we are 80 days away, I believe, from opening night, and St. Mary's will have a couple faces that a lot of people don't really recognize on opening night. But the first thing that we need to start with when talking about this St. Mary's team is the faces who are back in the mix with Randy Bennett's squad. Paulius Morauskas and Harry Wessels in the front court. I always mess up if it's Harry or Henry. It's Harry in that front court, alongside Mikey Lewis in the backcourt. Those are the three main returners for this group. Let's start in the front court. Let's start with Morauskas, who had a big year coming over from Arizona last year. What do you think is the next evolution for his game?
I mean, Paulius Morauskas is going to be. I think there's a big potential for a big step for him this season. You could see the potential that he has last year. He had a lot of big nights for the Gales. I think back to their road game at Utah, where he was really key down the stretch in that one. This is a guy who's capable of being a 20-point per game sort of player. He needs to be a little bit more consistent. There were definitely some nights where he kind of vanished. He didn't get involved early, and so he wasn't always a big participant if he didn't get involved right out the gate. And so I think the consistency for Morauskas is going to be a key this coming season. Also, I think there's going to be a little bit more of the rebounding and leadership responsibility dumped onto him, because this is a young team. Like, there's one senior, you mentioned him, Harry Wessels, on this squad, which is going to be a very unusual for St. Mary's. We're used to seeing this team with 2, 3, 4 seniors, and this one is going to have one. So Morauskas, as one of the elder statesmen on this squad, is going to have to take on a leadership role as well. And I would say going in, he's going to be one of the two guys that you're going to look to as being the best players on this team.
Yeah, no doubt. Was an all-conference guy, I think, last year. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers were, but whenever I seem to watch St. Mary's, I seem to catch him on a good day. 12-8 last year, just looking at the numbers online. He's got good size. He's kind of the type of player I feel like St. Mary's hasn't. If you think about the guys that St. Mary's has had, it's a lot of guards and a lot of bigs. But when you get a 3-4 power wing type like Morauskas, who's got that big size coming off the wing that can kind of play in between game, can play on the perimeter. I think that's really valuable for what they want to do. Obviously,
he also has an edge, I think, that you haven't seen a whole lot with St. Mary's teams in the past. You can just even see him kind of chirping back and forth with some of his opponents throughout the course of the year, which, again, you don't really see St. Mary's players doing that all too much. You'd have to go into the Wayback Machine to kind of find some guys who would do that sort of thing, like the Rob Joneses or an Omar Samhan back in the day. When you talk about that sort of edge to this sort of player. But yeah, Morauskas is going to give them the good inside out game. And he's a four-man who really gives them something different that they haven't had in really a long time in Moraga.
And I think that's really valuable. I just think that with this type of team, this is not a team that is stacked with proven talent. So having a guy that kind of plays with a little bit of hey, get behind me and we'll go. Like I will be the emotional leader on the floor. I think that he can be that for this team, and I think he plays like that. And maybe you didn't see it every game last year. I think that's going to be part of what Randy Bennett's going to be asking him to do all year.
For sure. Yeah. Morauskas is going to be one of those keys, leader on the court. And I think it's also going to be kind of keeping those emotions in check. Yes, being that emotional leader, but making sure you don't go a little too far over that line as well.
Harry Wessels is his partner in the front court. This is a big individual. And with Andrew McKeever, this is two big individuals in this front court. That's not something that is new for St. Mary's. Mitchell Saxon was a large individual. Wessels is bigger than him. I mean, 7'1", 275 pounds. And honestly, if you told me Wessels was 7'1" a couple of years ago when I saw him for the first time, I was like, really? He's only 7'1"? He looks like one of the biggest players in the country when you see him on TV or when you're watching him in person, like I did at the NCAA tournament a couple of years ago when they were in Albany. But last year, off the bench as kind of the secondary big man, it's all you would expect. It's a lot of the high efficiency touches around the rim. It's the block rate. It's the rebound rate. What do you think is the main difference, though, between his game and Saxon's?
So I think one of the things is between these two is there's a lot of talent behind Harry Wessels. I think Saxon was just so much more polished than Wessels is and was, because Wessels was a late comer to basketball, so he's still kind of learning the game as we're going. And Saxon was a little bit more of that finished product. You think about just the defensive player that Saxon was, the two-time defensive player of the year in the WCC. He really was able to anchor that defense on the back line. Haven't seen quite that from Wessels at this point, but I think Wessels has the potential to be a much better offensive player. He's a really good free throw shooter. I think he was actually St. Mary's best free throw shooter last year, which is always one of those shocker things when you see the center as the best free throw shooter. But he has I think a soft touch around the rim. He's bigger than Saxon. He's more physical than Saxon can be. I mean, I even think about like the matchup with Gonzaga and who had the guard Graham Ike. And the one who really was able to shove Ike around was Harry Wessels because of his size. And that's the thing I think that he gives you is that is just a wall that is hard to get around, whether he's just playing straight up or he's being that shot blocker. He gives them that size difference between he and Saxon. He's not quite as, I would say, not quite as mobile. And I think his conditioning is going to be a key part to watch this year. As Saxon was playing 30, 35 minutes a game. And that is probably what we're going to at least somewhat expect from a Harry Wessels going into this year. So seeing if he can get up to that number of minutes per game, stay out of foul trouble, and still be effective down the stretch is going to be that big change for him going into the year.
Yeah. And then Andrew McKeever coming off the bench. What do you think he brings that is a little different from Wessels, or is it mostly the same stuff? And if so, how are they going to need to get different production out of that 5 spot?
I think McKeever has a lot of potential. In the brief moments we got to see him last year, he was a good rebounder, decent shot blocker. He has good touch, but he also is someone who's going to be kind of learning on the job. These two, I think there's going to be a few more growing pains with how these two work together. Also, when you think about St. Mary's last year, we got to see more of that double big rotation where you saw Wessels and Saxon in at the same time. And I do think we're going to see some of that this year. We're going to see Wessels and McKeever in there at the same time, which again, you talked about the size, like 6'10", 7'1" of Saxon and Wessels. Then you're going to move up to 7'1" and 7'3" with Wessels and McKeever. This is going to be a big front line. I think it's going how they match up those two, that high-low is going to be fascinating because Wessels does have a bit of a touch from even the 3-point line. It's not unlike Saxon, who really, it's like you really didn't want him shooting at all from out there. Wessels has at least a decent touch from the perimeter, from the mid range, and that's going to be something I think we can see in that high-low game between those two. All of course, like this is in the rare moments where Morauskas will not be on the floor, because obviously he's going to be a big part of that front line. So between these three, I think we're going to get a good rotation of them. But I would expect at least some growing pains early on at the center spot in November and maybe into early December.
All right, now we have to talk about Mikey Lewis, the guy that I think most people are going to think about first when it comes to the St. Mary's team, because I think he's the ceiling swing piece. And I think that's kind of where people are going off with this. He averaged 8 a game last year coming off the bench. He had moments where he was the best player on the floor. He would come into a game and take over. He had the highest usage rate on the team. He had a really nice efficiency in conference play, 116 offensive rating. Took a lot of shots, made a lot of shots, made 58 threes last year. He scored 20 in that game against Nebraska. He had 15, 18 in a bunch of different games. But I think the expectation is now for him to be that 14, 13-point scorer every night. Do you think he can step into that role right now?
I think so. Like he seems like just the personality wise, someone who is ready for the moment. And it always seemed like whenever they were in a big game situation, talk about, you brought up Nebraska, whenever they played Gonzaga, he was one of the better players on the floor. He knows when he needs to step up, and going into this year, he's going to need to be that guy from really day one. You think about a backcourt that loses Augustus Marshallonis, the 2-time WCC player of the year, and loses Jordan Ross. Mikey Lewis is going to have to step into that role really quickly. And also, this is a team that doesn't really have a true point guard that is kind of like set and going into the rotation. So he's going to play a little bit more of that leadership role in the backcourt, probably a little bit more heavy on the ball handling front, with he and probably who I'd expect his starting backcourt mate to be in Tony Duckett. But those two, like, and especially with Mikey, I think that there's a huge opportunity for him to be that 13, 14 point per game scorer. I would say that's kind of, in my head, that's almost the floor for him. He's capable of more than that. His development, obviously going into year 2, will be critical. And it's always something to note that he's on a team with a coaching staff with 4 point guards between Randy Bennett, Mickey McConnell, Joe Rahan, and EJ Rowland. There's a lot of point guards on that coaching staff who can help him kind of feed into that role a little bit more. And St. Mary's has had this sort of score first point guard in the past. It's been a few years, but Jordan Ford was that guy not too long ago, and someone who could really light it up and be that main ball handler. And Mikey Lewis might just be that next guy.
Yeah, Jordan Ford, one of my favorite players at St. Mary's back in the day. Definitely, if you ask me like to name my favorite St. Mary's players ever, like Dellavedova is obviously going to be like number 1 or number 2. Jordan Ford's going to be up there. Mitchell Saxton might be my number 3. I was such a big fan of his game. And Mahaney for a stretch was as well. Kind of soured off of him because of what he did last year. Not at St. Mary's.
Didn't work out so well at UConn.
No, it didn't. You mentioned Tony Duckett. This is a sophomore backcourt. It's a young backcourt. 2 guys that had their impressive moments in the WCC last year. Why do you think St. Mary's targeted Duckett specifically?
One of their Achilles heels last year was outside shooting, and this is someone who gives them a little bit more of that. When you look at what St. Mary's was a year ago, I mean, they were, as a team, they shot 31% from 3-point range, which was 9th in the WCC. And you saw it in the NCAA tournament how Vanderbilt and Alabama really tried to take advantage of that poor 3-point shooting and force them to kind of be a little bit more one-dimensional on the perimeter. That's something they had to address, and I think the addition of Tony Duckett addresses that. Duckett was nearly a 34% 3-point shooter last year. You put him next to Mikey Lewis, who was a 37% 3-point shooter. You have, I think, helped your case on the perimeter on that front. Now, obviously, I talked about a team number, so everyone else is going to have to chip in there as well, but he filled a need. And I also think the athleticism that Duckett brings and what he was able to do at San Diego with really not a lot of help on that squad shows that if he's in a system, I think it shows that if he's in a system that is going to kind of free him up a little bit more, put him in better situations, that he is going to improve upon the numbers we saw with the Toreros a year ago.
Yeah. So that backcourt, Duckett and Lewis, Morauskas and Wessels in the front court. The fifth starter spot was kind of the one that was up for grabs in my eyes at some point. And then you start to read more about Dylan Shaw, the freshman coming in from Heritage Christian. This is definitely the type of player that really fits like a glove into what St. Mary's wants to do. And I can see, hold on. I feel like, oh, no, never mind. I thought I was frozen for a second. And like the thing about Dylan Shaw, I'll let you kind of get into it because you've definitely watched more. But I think he's kind of the exact fifth piece that a team like this needs.
Yeah, he's long, he is athletic, and he is expected at some point to be that stretch three that they do need. You think about something that St. Mary's really took advantage of over the last, like, let's say 5 years in this really good stretch that they've had 5 seed, 6 seed. They had a knockdown 3-point shooter. Like, you might think Alex Dukas, who just could stand there in the corner and just drill 3 after 3 after 3. And he was near automatic in doing it. And that is something I think in the long term that this team hopes that Dylan Shaw can turn into, not obviously like not necessarily as stationary as Dukas was, but because he can bring a lot more. Like, you think about the defensive end, you think about his length and everything else. I think there's a lot to that, but I don't think Dylan Shaw is going to be the only guy who's going to be in competition for this 3 spot. I think if you talk about open competition, that's the one spot on this team. There's a few guys who could really kind of step into this. Another one of the guys that's coming over from Lithuania, Mantis Juhenis, he's coming over for 6'6" forward. He was just playing in the U20 Euro basketball tournament. He would average 11 points, 4 rebounds over there, and he's shot 40% from 3. So there's another guy who could end up stepping into that 3 spot. You think there's other guys like Rory Hawk, who's coming back off of injury. He could end up sliding in there. We could end up seeing someone like a Liam Campbell getting some minutes as well. There's going to be a lot of fluctuation, I think, early on for who gets the minutes at the 3, and even talking about like the backups of who's going to be getting more minutes at the 2 and getting more minutes at the 4, because this is you mentioned it early. There's not that many familiar names and a lot of new names that people are going to get familiar with the squad.
Do you think that it's a little concerning that, like, hey, the bench is full of a lot of freshmen, a lot of sophomores that haven't played, a lot of redshirt freshmen, international, just guys that we have never seen play college basketball, not even transfers, but guys that we have never seen play college basketball?
Typically, I would think that would, on paper, that's a concern. On the face value, that's concern. But based off of what I've heard from inside, the coaching staff are very high on a lot of these guys, and they don't expect there to be a big drop off, that they are very confident in a lot of the players that are going to be here. Juhenis, I mentioned, like, a lot of the coaching staff's really high on him. Liam Campbell is going to be another one. Also, I haven't mentioned Josh Dent, who is maybe the one true point guard on this team, and we could see a big leap from him in year 2. He got to play sparingly last season, and he did play in some key moments. It wasn't like he only got the garbage minutes last year. So that's another guy you could see get some key minutes off the bench. But again, like, it is a little concerning, which is why I'm very kind of hesitant and cautious about this St. Mary's team, because don't have a true point guard. It's a really young team. Still have to figure out a lot of the rotations and what that's going to look like. And we haven't seen the schedule quite yet, but we know they're going to be playing in the battle for Atlantis. And so there's some opportunities there to really kind of help the resume out. But they have some things to figure out. And there are some teams in the WCC who I feel are a little bit more solidified, at least at the top of the league.
Yeah, I'm really excited for St. Mary's this year. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I know what it's going to look like. That's kind of what I've come to with this program over the last few years. Randy Bennett is one of the best 15 coaches in college basketball. Probably, like, I wouldn't argue with you if you said he's one of the 10 best coaches in college basketball. Just the fact that he's able to consistently extract winners and winners and winners out of that program 4 years in a row. They have significantly overperformed their preseason KenPom estimate. They top 25 team 4 years in a row, 4 NCAA tournament berths in a row, just 4 conference losses in the last 3 years. I think that St. Mary's, like, we talk about Gonzaga and what Gonzaga is because, like, they've been national title contender good at times, but St. Mary's has been in, like, you're going to look back at this in 25, 30 years when it's likely that St. Mary's is not this level of program, and someone's gonna and like someone my age is gonna look at KenPom and say, was St. Mary's really like that? And yeah, like they were like that.
Mm-hmm.
They are like that because Randy Bennett just comes up and takes these guys you've never heard of and turns them into studs overnight. And I'm really excited to see what this year's St. Mary's team has. So if you came to hear about Tyler Self and where he's working, you came to the right place. If you came to hear about St. Mary's basketball, you came to the right place. And if you came to hear about the latest happenings with Caleb Grill, you came to the right place. This is season 6, episode 35 of Brackets, Bubbles, and Bit Stealers, our St. Mary's tip-off talk preview, and we will see you next time.